Welcome, class, to the highly anticipated deep dive into the origins of the Crucible Guard, those few who stood guard for the Golden Crucible. Today's lecture concerns a pivotal question. What happens when an army of alchemists loses everything? The fall and rebirth of the Crucible Guard is a secretive chapter in modern military history. If you wish to continue your studies into the forces that shape the Iron Kingdoms, be sure to enroll by subscribing and to participate by liking this video. So, without further ado, let's begin with the origins of the Crucible Guard. The Crucible Guard began as the private mercenary force protecting the Order of the Golden Crucible. The existence of armed protectors for the Order goes back to its beginnings, as the Golden Crucible was formed by the survivors of the earliest arcanists who resisted the Orgoth. However, its size, scope, and operational needs have changed considerably over time. The earliest precursor to the Crucible Guard was the Army of Thunder, which fought the Orgoth using the first firearms and cannons invented during the early rebellion. The survival of the Thunderhead fortress until modern times is credited to this army's efforts. It managed to prevent the seizure of Lerin in 86 AR, allowing the city to join a select few others to become bastions of the rebellion and help usher in the new Iron Kingdoms. Once the Orgoth were driven away and the nascent nations of the Iron Kingdoms had taken form, the need for the Golden Crucible to support a private army diminished. Wars did not disappear, but the Order dedicated itself to commercial efforts and sought to avoid getting caught up in armed conflicts, at least until recently. They served a specific niche by providing alchemical services, most importantly, the production and sale of blasting powder, required for firearm ammunition. They soon gained a virtual monopoly over the civilian market for these goods, while taking on substantial military contracts as well. This lucrative trade focused their efforts on commerce and on establishing branch offices across several kingdoms. Their wares and facilities required protection, and this was the role now taken on by the Crucible Guard. While the Order profited from wars abroad, mercenary companies had quickly become their foremost clients. They had no interest in fighting in these conflicts directly. Any nation it would attack was a potential customer for its blasting powder and other products. Instead, its armed guards patrolled and defended the Order's facilities, including the mining operations that secured the red powder in the Laerles Mountains, Thunderhead Fortress in eastern Lael, and dozens of scattered chapter houses across the Iron Kingdoms. For a time, these facilities existed in every human kingdom. The Cadoran branches were dismantled when the Grey Lord's Covenant was founded, leaving the Order with a strong presence in Ord, Lael, and Signar. The organization has never attempted to establish a branch in the Protectorate of Menoth due to the inherent perils of the theocracy's policies regarding the arcane. The Guard served the Order of the Golden Crucible with distinction for many centuries, while the larger organization sought to remain aloof from most conflicts. The Crucible Guard eventually made an exception when it came to the defense of Lael, where its headquarters, the Thunderhead Fortress, was located. During the most recent Laerles War, beginning at the end of 604 and ending in the middle of 605 AR, hundreds of Guard soldiers fought in countless bloody clashes to slow the inexorable Cadoran advance. They supported the Laerlese army's beleaguered garrisons and fought alongside forces of the Signaran army, sent into the kingdom to bolster their longtime ally. When the fighting went poorly, elements of the Guard shielded the Order's members as they fled to seek shelter in Signar or Ord. After Kador seized Lerin and the Thunderhead Fortress, the Guard was disbanded in Lael, resulting in decentralized leadership for its remaining members elsewhere. Some surrendered their weapons and retired in disgrace, but others refused to bow to the occupiers. They fled for Ridden to join the growing resistance in Free Lael, or made for Corvus or other Golden Crucible branch holdings to continue serving the fractured organization. When the leaders of the Order began to consider reforming in Ord, those who still considered themselves Crucible Guard went west to join in founding the new Golden Crucible headquarters in Midfast in 607 AR. Though this decision to move was not without controversy and debate, King Baird Cathor II had aggressively pursued the Order and made compelling promises. Here in Ord, with the full support of a sovereign, with a track record for neutrality, and a kingdom that had proven to be a fertile haven for mercenary commerce, the Crucible Guard would be revived and reinvented, stronger than ever before. The newly reinvented Crucible Guard began an aggressive campaign of recruitment. The survivors put out the call to mercenaries across Signar and Ord, luring them with a promise of good pay and the exclusive use of advanced military hardware. This recruitment drive succeeded, but as the Order brought in the new personnel and invested in its new facilities, its coffers continued to dwindle. Having lost its monopoly on blasting powder after the fall of the Thunderhead, along with other setbacks since the Laerlese occupation, their finances suffered. In 609 AR, King Baird arranged for a meeting with the leaders of the Golden Crucible and its Guard. The King of Ord was a shrewd man, canny about the use of his nation's limited resources. He knew Ord would not be able to withstand a full-scale assault from Kador, which had become increasingly belligerent along its borders. Baird put forward a proposition. He would provide the Order, and through it the Crucible Guard, with substantial financial backing, redirecting treasury funds originally allocated to the Ordic Navy. In return, he asked for right of first refusal on any new military projects, as well as aid in retrofitting Ord's warjack arsenal with newer, more effective cortexes and weaponry. Baird placed certain conditions on the Order's leadership. He insisted on having a say in the deployment of the Crucible Guard's forces, essentially turning them into a dedicated mercenary army. Some senior members had their reservations about the proposal, but others, including Aurum Adeptus Silvestro, argued in favor of the agreement, seeing it as the only way forward. In spite of the dissent of conservative leaders, in the end the Order of the Golden Crucible agreed to Baird's terms. In addition to basic military contracts, the king included many indirect incentives to support the organization's infrastructure, such as the donation of several large building complexes within Midfast and priority access to support personnel. Arrangements were made with a number of mercantile organizations in Berk, Merin, and Caredova to provide access to much-needed raw materials at a steep discount. With this backing in place, the Crucible Guard increased its rate of recruitment and training. Simultaneously, its alchemists and arcane mechanics devoted themselves to improving the military assets of the Guard, experimenting with new ways in which to wage war. For over 2 years, they tested all manner of prototypes and worked with the Ordic army to develop tactics and strategies. Some of the experiments in this period of rapid development proved to be highly effective, like adaptations to the proven Vanguard chassis and adjustments to the Toro chassis as a heavy warjack platform. Others led to unexpected boons, like a series of alchemical serums developed by Dr. Alejandro Mosby that gave rise to the trances. A group of mentally unbalanced human subjects turned into powerful weapons. For every such success, there were dozens of failures. But even in their failures, the Crucible Guard made gains. Every experiment laid the groundwork for a new round of development. Every prototype gave rise to the next refinement. In this time, a new generation of skilled alchemists rose to prominence, as well as numerous soldiers and a few highly skilled warcasters. In the last days of 611 AR, when the war between Kador and Signar had reached a critical turning point, the Crucible Guard was ready. Though it lacked the numbers of a traditional army, the Guard had greater strength than ever before, with many companies of infantry at its disposal, supported by heavy troopers and warjacks. At the request of Aurum Legate Lucas de More, who had just been freed from imprisonment by the Cadorans, an army of the Crucible Guard marched from Ord in strength, crossing the Thornwood Forest for western Lael. There they would join a conflict already in progress between the Cadorans and an uneasy alliance of the Signaran army and the Laelis resistance. And that concludes the origins of the Crucible Guard and their adjustment from just the Guard of the Golden Crucible to one of the most technologically and alchemically advanced armies in the Iron Kingdoms, and their new relationship with the Kingdom of Ord. But before we leave this history course, I'm sure if you are interested in the ins and outs of this particular organization, you would like to know a bit about their hierarchy. Who is the head of this group? How does it operate, and how is it organized? If you would be so kind, please like, subscribe, and comment if you are enjoying these longer form videos. But without further delay, let's begin into their structure. The organization of the Crucible Guard draws from and expands on the original historical structure of the Golden Crucible. The military has undergone some reformation in the past several years, adding ranks as required. Both the Crucible Guard and the larger order prefer simple hierarchies to complex ones, and so, despite a proliferation of titles, there is a relatively straightforward chain of command. Some of the titles utilized by the alchemists themselves, for example, do not confer authority, but instead suggest expertise or mastery over a given field. The operational size of the organization also reduces the need for a complex hierarchy. The Golden Crucible boasted branch offices in many large towns and cities, but membership at each was limited and simply organized. The Crucible Guard is similarly small compared to a national standing army, its total soldiery having strength on the order of a single division of the Signaran or Cadoran armies. Even with the increased recruitment in the last few years, the Crucible Guard favors seasoned fighters with years of experience. A rather select pool of candidates, where some would see a weakness in this lack of numbers, the Crucible Guard sees a strength. the entire army can be outfitted with the highest quality weapons and equipment at the Guard's disposal, and logistics for supply chains and for outfitting a battle group remain simple, allowing the organization to be strategically mobile and flexible. Leadership of the Order. The leader of the Order of the Golden Crucible is Aurum Magnus Helt Langworth, who also has broad oversight over dispatching the Order's military elements, deciding its larger priorities and strategic objectives. The Aurum Magnus remains in Ord to oversee the ongoing expansion of the Order and its military, coordinating with the Assembly of Masters on matters of concern and acting as a guiding voice for all of the Golden Crucible's efforts at home and abroad. Serving the Aurum Magnus are the collective Aurum Lucanum, the senior-most alchemists in the Order. These leaders oversee various aspects of organization, including running secondary chapter houses. The Aurum Magnus's role is complicated by agreements made with King Baird, Cathor II, Sovereign of Ord, who has been given special considerations in the use of this military arm. Another senior member of the organization, Aurum Lucanum Krina Torkale, serves as the primary liaison with the Ordic government and oversees its military contracts. It is understood that King Baird's strategic goals will be given priority, making the Crucible Guard an indirect extension of Ord's military strength. Aurum Legate Lucas de Moray fills an unusual position, with some overlap in his duties between the parent Order and the Crucible Guard. A former Aurum Lucanum from Thunderhead Fortress, he has been given special oversight over all remaining Laerlease elements of the Order of the Golden Crucible and the Crucible Guard. He is also responsible for coordinating the efforts of the military with Laerlease resistance fighters, and his words carry great weight with the Resistance Council. Given that the current major conflict for the Guard involves military efforts in Lael, he has had a very active leadership role. Aurum Adeptus Silvestro works closely with the Aurum Legate, supervising the ranks of combat alchemists assigned to the Crucible Guard. Silvestro's role also crosses the gap between the alchemical and military branches of the Golden Crucible. Day-to-day oversight of the Order falls to the Assembly of Masters, made up of members of the Aurum Lucanum rank. This body advises the Aurum Magnus and keeps him apprised of significant current affairs. It is rare for all of the Masters to be present at the Mid-Fast headquarters, as the heads of individual chapters are typically busy running their branches. Many members of the Assembly are also the head of a department of research and development. Aurum Lucanum Athenor Locke, for example, oversees the arcane mechanics who produce warjacks for the Crucible Guard. Subordinate to the Aurum Lucanum are the Aurum Ominous, each a full-fledged member of the Order. The Ominous work in various departments under the oversight of an Aurum Lucanum and have myriad specialties or dedicated fields of study. Combat alchemist sergeants in the Crucible Guard hold this rank. Acquiring any of these higher ranks requires passing difficult attestation tests to prove competence in one's field. The lowest rank within the Order of the Golden Crucible is that of apprentice, aspiring members who assist one or more Aurum Ominous in their work. Apprentice combat alchemists are common, as they possess adequate understanding of alchemical formulae, while simultaneously being disposable in the grand scheme. Those who struggle to pass rank attestations may serve as apprentices for many years, so not all with this rank are young. Leadership of the Crucible Guard. Commander of the Guard, Jean Resson Daggett, has ultimate oversight of the Crucible Guard from its headquarters in Midfast. With the recent reorganization, Commander Daggett's role has become primarily administrative, with an emphasis on coordination between the Crucible Guard and the Ordic military, and she is in close and frequent contact with Aurum Lucanum Crina Torcoil. Marshal General Baldwin Gearhart has become the de facto leader of the active army, at least on an operational level. A talented mercenary warcaster, the Marshal General commands the military strength of the forces mustered in Ord. He technically outranks Aurum Legate de Moray in military matters, though in practice he defers to Moray's suggestions, given the legate's intelligence, force of personality, and close familiarity with the situation in Lael. Despite their very different personalities, the two work together well, and Gearhart is quite content to leave many details to the Aurum Legate while he focuses on his primary vocation, blowing things up with the latest military hardware entrusted to him. The Crucible Guard otherwise functions akin to other large mercenary outfits, with Captain as the highest field officer rank, each overseeing a company. The size of a company varies depending on its composition, with the largest being infantry companies and the smallest being railless companies, which can include as few as 12 vehicles and their crew. Companies are divided into platoons, each under the command of a lieutenant, and platoons are in turn broken into squads, with the lieutenant personally leading a command squad and sergeants commanding the others. Railless platoons consist of 4 vehicles, with each vehicle acting as its own squad, and each vehicle commander equivalent in rank to a sergeant. Companies are distributed to multiple fronts at the discretion of the commander of the guard and the marshal general. Often groupings of companies are led by designated individuals, especially warcasters like Aurum Legate de Moray or Aurum Adeptus Silvestro, though other influential leaders can also take on this role. In other cases, a senior company captain receives temporary promotion to marshal to handle the duty of commanding subordinate captains. This loose organization allows the army to respond quickly on multiple fronts. Each captain has greater authority to make strategic decisions in the face of an unfolding battle, provided those choices align with the overall goals of a mission. A company operates as its own discrete unit much of the time, responding to threats as it deems fit, until receiving overriding orders from above. Specialized companies, such as Railless Interceptor, Rocket Infantry, and Heavy Infantry companies, are often paired with one or more infantry companies as a support element, depending on the strategic objective they have been assigned. Upon completing a mission, these companies can expect to be reassigned elsewhere, and that, my students, completes the hierarchy and ranks of the Crucible Guard. Join us next week as we will be getting into the training of the Guard, and maybe more depending on the winds. As always, thank you so much for attending class, and if you never want to miss another, please like, subscribe, and share with others to help expand our class size and let others know about this fantastic world. Also, if you have any questions or comments, please note them below. And as always, class dismissed.